Welcome to Business in the Pod, a podcast where D'Amore-McKim students like myself sit down with college leadership to explore trending business topics. It's my honor to introduce Professor Laura Huang, Associate Dean of Executive Education and Distinguished Professor here at Northeastern, and the Faculty Director of the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative. She's the best-selling author of Edge, Turning Adversity into Advantage, in which she argues that success isn't just about working hard, it's also how others perceive you. In her new book called You Already Know, she demonstrates that intuition, what we often refer to as gut feeling, is not mystical, but it emerges from data and experience. Before Northeastern, she taught at Harvard Business School and Wharton and worked across several consulting, banking firms, and management firms. She also created this project called Amplify, translating her research into real impact by empowering underserved communities. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Firstly, I would like to introduce myself to you. My name is Manya, and I'm a sophomore at Northeastern. I'm doing a double major in econ and business with a concentration in finance. And for my first semester, I went to Paris, study abroad, and I studied at the American University of Paris. And yeah, I'm involved in clubs like Women in Business, the AI Club, and apart from like academics, I love to explore new forms of workout. I love to play sports, squash, and yeah, I just love networking. I love talking to new people, build new connections, because I feel like you get to learn so much from other people's perspective, and like it's amazing just to like talk to other people and like network.
Wonderful. You're so accomplished already in just the 2 years that you've been here. So that's so amazing to hear.
Yeah. But how are you? Can you tell us?
Doing well. Yeah. Busy, but can't complain. Everything has been going well. There's a lot of action and a lot of energy on campus, and so things have been going really well.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about your background, like where you grew up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, my background is actually that I came from I came from an engineering background, actually. So I was an engineer by training, spent lots of my early years working in engineering, and then made a pretty pivotal shift where I then went into the business world and into a lot of the things that I'm studying now, which is much more around the people and behavioral economics and decision making and perception. So, that's why I always say sometimes it's, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And so lots of stops and starts. And so it's totally fine for people, students who are still trying to figure out their way. You can have decades of a career like me and still be trying to figure it out. So, but that's part of the fun.
Yeah. So how did you, what was your first job, or where did you start working?
Oh, my first job, I worked at a library. I was a librarian.
That's cool.
Shelving
that's
books.
Cool.
Yes, that was my first job ever. And it was a funny thing because, I've always been someone who is never, I'm kind of like bifurcated in the way that like my interests are all over the place.
Yeah.
Right? So my first job was in a library, but I was also a cheerleader in high school. And so I would go to the library and then rush off to cheerleading practice. And then I would be, studying for, physics. And then I would be, but my favorite class was physics, but also gym. So there was all these different pieces to me. And I think that's part of what I've kind of continued to embrace throughout my career and throughout the things. It's just being able to take diverse pieces or diverse interests or things that come all over the place and being able to integrate it in a way that really, really worked. So even from a really young age, I realized that I was doing that. I would get bored if I was too far in one direction, too much using my right brain and not using my left brain, or too far using my left brain and not my right brain. So just finding opportunities to combine those two.
Yeah, you should, it's always good to try new things and use both sides of your brain, as you said. What makes the D'Amore-McKim's executive education distinct from the ones offered at other universities?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of key distinctions that really make us special. I think one of the things is that we have this commitment towards lifelong learning, right? Things that you're learning in one stage of your life are very relevant, but you also want to continue to learn as you grow and you progress, right? So even when I was early on in my career, I was learning lots of the technical pieces, operations, marketing and finance and all of the things. But then later on you progress and you realize, man, there's a lot that I need to learn about the people side of things, about leadership, about negotiations. And so that lifelong learning thread, I think, is something that we carry forward through all of our programs. We are also, I would say, something that's really special is that we're really on the ground. We've got a lot of on-the-ground knowledge that we always bring to programs. So we do a lot of, in our exec ed programs, some of them we do visits with other companies, right? So you're seeing kind of the schemas and the mental models and the prototypes that others that are really successful in your industry or even tangential to your industry are sort of using. And so you're able to bring a lot of that into your own business. So we do a lot of those on-the-ground experiential types of things that we build into programs.
Yeah.
We also do a lot in terms of customized programs, right? Looking at companies and the particular problems that they're having, whether it's change management or whether there's a new initiative that they're trying to incorporate. And we have a very customizable, yet it's almost like a consulting model where we work with them to make sure that the programs that we're providing to them are spot on, that are related to their business, but also bringing in different pieces that they may not have considered through the experiences that we have with a variety of different industries.
Okay. And how long are these programs for? Like, do you have a range?
So again, that customizable piece is what makes it so special.
Can it be like 2 days?
So some are 2 or 3 days. It's 2 or 3 days.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Programs. Yep. So like an 8-hour program for the whole program. Some of them, there's multiple modules. So for example, there's a company where we do a program that lasts across, it's about 12 to 18 months, but there's 3 modules. One is in Boston, one is in India, one was in Munich, Germany. And we they kind of come in and do the 3 days, and then they have time to process, a couple of months to work on different things, go back to their jobs, then they come back, and then another 3 days in a different location, and then and so we have all sorts of different programs.
That's so cool. And do you like get a degree at the end, or like you do?
So no,
not all of them, I think.
They get, so the executive education programs, it's really about sort of that certificate that they're getting, the knowledge that they're getting. They all have, some of them are already executives, C-suite executives, some of them are mid-career, some of them are early career, but they all have, already their base, their foundation of their job, their function, their expertise. And what we add on is that layer, that extra layer of that lifelong learning.
Oh, okay. And are these programs offered in person? Like, what other locations? Is it just India and US?
Oh, no, it's any location.
Any location?
We customize and we tailor the entire program.
Oh, so it can be anywhere.
Yes, anywhere. So India was because that company had a lot of call centers and service, and they were very heavily service oriented. So we designed one of the modules specifically for them in India. Okay. And then we designed the module for them in Munich because they're headquartered in Europe. And so they were flying people in from all over Europe. And so that was sort of a central location. We do our programs, mainly about 80% of them are in person. But we do have some high flex programs where some of them are live virtual.
Okay.
Everything is live, so none of it is sort of recorded and kind of packaged. It's all customized for that client and live delivered.
Yeah.
And then location depends. I mean, a lot of the programs we do deliver in Boston or any of our northeastern campuses. So Oakland, Burlington,
London.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but we're not restricted just by those locations. So I've got a wonderful team, and the team will, they will scope out whatever location. So, for India, for example, my team went to Bengaluru and they looked at hotels, they looked at conference centers, they planned a banana leaf dinner, they did all sorts of things to make it truly like an experience.
Yeah. I went to high school in Bangalore.
You did?
Yeah.
So
yes.
I can tell you the name of the places we went. You can tell us whether we had
Yeah, we'll talk about it for sure. That's interesting. Okay, and looking at the executive education today, what themes or topics are leaders most eager to, learn about right now? Like, what are they interested in?
So there is a lot of change going on in today's world. And so some of our most popular programs are programs that are looking specifically at change management. How do you effectively integrate something that's new, whether it's a new IT system or it's a new strategy or you have a new leadership team coming in? How do you actually think through the entire organization and making sure that it's going to be a successful change management effort, right? Transformation, cultural transformation. These are topics that a lot of corporations are interested in. We also have a lot of programs where people are at different stages of their career. So we might have high potentials. And they have been very, very good in their roles, but now as they move to the next stage of their career, they need different types of skills. They need to be able to understand more around leadership dynamics and team dynamics. And so we have lots of programs that are for mid-level, high potential folks that are in their organizations. We also do a lot of programs for rotational programs, right? So there are these companies that bring in really smart, fresh graduates or early graduates and put them into cohorts, right? And they might have a rotational program where they'll spend a year in different functions. And what we do is we basically fill in the blanks. We do the training and the orientation and the programs around these kind of programs. So every time they finish a new rotation, we'll do 3 days or a couple of days of workshops, interactive activities, lots of, practical skills and ways that you can actually be applying things and frameworks in your job. So a lot of programs like that as well.
Oh, that's interesting. This is like something new because I didn't know about this, like rotational and then change.
Yeah.
And like what skills or mindsets do you believe that leaders need the most today? And like how does the executive education at D'Amore help them?
I think one of the things that we talk a lot about is adaptability and being able to kind of bob and weave and pivot as you need to, but not just adaptability, being able to be adaptable with a thoughtfulness, with a sense of empathy, with the ability to really and this is something that I think a lot about even in my research, is how do we make these strategic decisions in a way that, there's always this constant balance between how much do we rely on the data, how much do we rely on our gut feel. Sometimes we need to honestly toss out the data and lean on our gut feel. Other times our gut feel might be guiding us in the wrong direction and we need to gather more data. And knowing the difference between the two and really being adaptable in that way with a sense of thoughtfulness and empathy.
Yeah, this reminds me of your book again. Can you share an example of how executive education had a direct impact on any organization or like company?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been really fortunate in the fact that not only have we worked with some tremendous organizations, but they keep coming back and we keep developing the next generation of training and learning and lifelong learning for them. So we've worked in industries as broad as telecommunication, transportation, retail, food and beverage. And as we see a lot that's sort of changing, what we've, again, it's been so fun to kind of see how organizations will take something that they've learned and completely shift their thinking around something. So we've seen organizations that typically were, their kind of go-to-market strategy was in one direction, and then we saw that they were going more enterprise, and they were shifting that way. We've seen companies that have made mergers and acquisitions decisions differently because they realized that there was a piece of their business that was missing that they really wanted to embed. We've seen just tremendous ways that it has like really has translated into real business. But I think for me, the most gratifying part is not seeing these large macro changes.
Yeah.
It's been the individual participants in the programs who come up afterwards and say, wow, like, I'm really good. I want to try this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Or ones that kind of stay in touch and months later will send me a note and say, like, hey, what do you think about this? Or, you know, they continue to engage with the material that they learned. And I think that's, you know, rather than trying to change things at a global or macro level, for me, it's always been that individual connection and being able to see that piece. That's been really fun.
I mean, the fact that they always come back, like, it says a lot.
It's been nice because we've been able to see all parts of the business, lots of businesses that we normally wouldn't have, or even different perspectives, right? So a food and beverage company, I won't name which one, you can probably guess. You might be picking up a can of their soda, right? And you would be drinking it, but you know, but now we understand so much more around, like, the bottling, that the business of bottling, the business of, like, going and stocking shelves and how that's changed over time, and how there used to be a much more personal relationship and thinking about the routes that they have to drive, all these sort of things, so much more than just the brand of that soda or the brand of their products.
I think I can guess the brand.
Or you can guess that you can narrow it down to maybe two.
Of course, I think I know it. Okay, so from your perspective as a researcher and a thought leader, what excites you most about working with them, like working with executives?
You know, I feel like it keeps me on my toes in a really good way. It makes you think about real problems that people are facing, and not only that immediate problem, but how it trickles down to all sorts of different walks of life, not just the people of the organization, but you start thinking much more broadly. Like, everything seems to initially have maybe just one or two connection points, but then you see that how the whole, like, nomological network sort of kinds of, you know, expands based on how the regulatory environment looks, based on how, you know, distribution looks, how things are changing. You know, I always talk about how gut feel never lies. It never lies.
No.
As long as you're using it for the right decisions, right? So for, like, simple decisions, you know, decisions where, you know, think of like flipping a coin, you know, there is a right or wrong kind of answer. You should never use your gut feel, because at best it would be redundant, right? But there's these types of questions, and most of the time we're in that scenario, these chaotic types of problems where even if you tried to collect all of the data, you know, you would maybe have 70 to 80% of the information that you need. And so that's where gut feel and your experience and your expertise and your culture and your background, even your trauma, all of these things combine with the data to allow you to make these decisions, to take action, right? Because gut feel, in my research, I find that gut feel is data. It's data plus your personal experience that kind of culminates in this executive summary. This flash of clarity that you have. And so I think my favorite, what I love the most about working with executives is sorting through that sort of data, realizing that we're only going to ever have 70 to 80%. And how do we combine that data with the resources, the expertise, the people, the personal experiences, all of those things that we have to be able to take action.
That's interesting. And if you could give like a piece of advice to the executives considering D'Amore-McKim's programs, what would it be? Advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of what we, there's always a process and then there's an outcome. And we need to be able to, and recognizing that there's a distinction between that kind of process where we're combining data and our own intuitions and all those things, and then there's a discrete outcome. And so we work a lot with, or at least in some of the courses and sessions that I teach, around taking action. The importance of taking action. You take that action and then you make that action the right choice for you by continuing to iterate and pivot. The more you take action and do something, the more you're going to be able to progress. Spending too much time in that sort of iterating process, sometimes put that iterating process after the fact. That's probably one thing I would say. The other thing I would say is that there's always a way to gain an edge.
Yeah.
There's always a way to gain an advantage. And gaining an edge doesn't have to be a negative. This is not a thing where we say, oh, like sometimes we get uncomfortable, like, oh, we don't want to get that advantage.
Yeah.
No. There are ways in which we can take constraints and barriers and obstacles and be able to flip them in our favor. And so a lot of the sessions that I also teach are around how do we understand constraints? How do we understand obstacles? Constraints don't have to be constraining.
Yeah.
You can actually flip them to your advantage. And there are ways that we can do this through in our organizations with the resources that we have.
Okay. And how do your programs help them turn challenges into opportunities for growth? If you could tell me.
So some of the courses that we teach, the first is just understanding how we sometimes self-constrain.
Yeah.
Right. So before we even think about competitors and external factors, we often self-constrain ourselves. We tend to look at the resources that we have on hand or the people or the expertise. And so we discuss different mental models and ways that we can take their core strengths, their basic goods, and be able to not self-constrain, to be able to emphasize and build upon those. Then we talk lots about the external constraints, the environment, how we can actually understand stakeholders and understand the dynamics of an environment, and ways that within the confines of their bread and butter, their core product, their core culture, how we are able to, flip that to their advantage. And so we do, case studies. We do interactional activities. We do visits, like I mentioned, to external companies. We do a lot of we have one client who loves that sense-making pizza.
Yeah.
Right? And so we do a lot of that, right? I always laugh when I hear it because I can hear his voice saying, we need more sense-making, right? So lots more sense-making around constantly understanding the different ways that things are done and then bringing it back to you, to your organization, the way that things should be done in your organization or could be done in your organization. So lots of those kinds of ways that is a part of our executive education practice, the way that we design programs. I've got a fabulous team of program designers who run these programs. These program directors are so talented at being able to be with the clients, be with these organizations, and design, here's what the program should look like. Mm-hmm. And then we staff faculty, we staff experts in these programs to really deliver this top-notch experience.
Okay. And do you see, where do you see the future of executive education heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
I also see executive education as having some, there's going to be some stops and starts. There's going to be some organizations who want a particular type of education. There's going to be some that are maybe we don't need this, or maybe we want to do it in-house. There's going to be others that are we need to go really, really drastic and really radical in the way we do this. But I think that sort of the thread throughout is that we are customized, right? And so we kind of meet the client where they are, and I think that that's going to be a really interesting direction for the future, right? There's some organizations where most of the ways that they're thinking about succession planning, or they're thinking about their organization and people management and how people can kind of deliver towards their ultimate vision. They can handle a lot of it themselves, but they need to bring in some outside perspectives every now and then. We meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
We tailor, we overlap, we have this union with what they're already delivering. There's other clients who are we don't know what we don't know. All we know is sort of the constraints we're dealing with. We know the problems that we're having, and we can also come in and fully design, work with the organization, and from scratch be their entire learning and development kind of arm, right? And so I see that this need for customization and meeting them where they're at in the stage of of company that they're at. Are they a early stage company that's still trying to find their product market fit?
Yeah.
Are they a company that has been around for hundreds of years and their brand is very, very stable and they're afraid of kind of cannibalizing their own products, or they're afraid of new disruptive companies coming in? Right? Are they something in the middle? Are they an accounting firm where they understand that there's a necessity to be innovative, but they just can't, because you can't be disruptive in the same way. You can't be innovative in the same way as an accounting firm, right? But we're able to kind of meet them where they're at and understand that they're a accounting firm, for example, and then build in and within the confines of what they need to be doing.
Can you walk us through the process of building an executive education program for a new client?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is where a lot of like the magic happens, right? Is that building, I think there's magic as well in the delivery of it, but that planning process as well. So typically it starts with an initial kind of phone call just to kind of understand. It's more just sort of let's understand the landscape right now. Let's understand what it is that maybe you have some concerns that you're not sure about, that you want to unearth more. Maybe there's a part of the business in particular that you want to start with. It's sort of just, let's get a lay of the land. And you typically do this with one of our program directors who are just fabulous. They really understand all sorts of different types of businesses. Like I said, they're on the ground. So they've seen companies in many, many different industries. So they're going to be able to tie in and understand things that are universal. Some of our program directors, most of our program directors have MBAs themselves. One of our talented program directors has an MBA from Northeastern.
Oh.
Right? Yes. And so she's able to, so she's got, kind of that understanding of
everything around.
Yeah, exactly. And then we start to scope it out. And so we give an initial kind of, here's what we think that the program could look like. We add in particular case studies. We start brainstorming any company visits that they want to do. And it's really this process that's a joint process where there's a partnership. For clients that don't want that sort of partnership, we can also handle, okay, we'll do all of it. Some of them are like, just do the whole thing and then give us the final. But, so there's multiple variations of it. And then once we have sort of a rough estimate of what the program looks like, and we don't scope out the entire program because things will kind of shift over time. We start agreeing upon the details, the location, the timing, all of those things. There's a dedicated program director. There's usually a dedicated faculty director. It's a very iterative process, right? So even after that first phone call, our program directors are putting together that initial design. They present it to the client. They work with the client to get feedback, to tweak it, to do all of those sort of things.
Thank you, Laura Huang, for joining us today.